just wish he had more time to relax. He does Mondays off. He has Mondays off. But if he doesn't, I just have to he has Saturdays. I say you weren't here last time. My purse sat over there during the whole day. Well, I just want you to know, I did say
Then you want to start doing it. Then they start. You know, we do it on the trail today?
No. Engineer's office. Oh, well, I can understand why you're yeah, I bet.
you're welcome.
That's around the mud sometimes.
Some of those you run and forget, right?
Depending upon what alternates we want, could change. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Otherwise, if you wait, now we want to.
Everybody
got to get that may spur the contractor.
I ain't gonna say no.
I'll be serious on this.
I'm incognito.
Because it's everybody they told me the connection between water easement, sewer easement, without changing fishing water. Because they see that as for that reason. We'll let y'all know power being the people I work for. We got a meeting next week. Started off with we're here at the Spirit of Cooperation. I'm not full kind of this week. Back up there next week. Expect to get some cooperation. They don't want to play that way. They want to get that off. Because all they have to do is play by the rules. Not follow you. That's why you're not the story I use about like that. Just years ago.
That's right. How you doing? Good to see you. Yeah, good. Good.
We'll back it up to that 63 seconds. About 48 feet on two. You want to mess it up?
Yeah, everybody get in. Oh, you didn't see the table back there? Yeah, hey, people who got here early ate it.
Or whatever it is.
I remember we were taking Texas.
You come sit here. Are you not going to go sit?
Tell me some good news.
Hey, I got a pulse. You know? I figure at my age, every day's a bonus.
Wake up. Hang on.
It's a gift. Another day. It's a good day. What's that old adage? If I knew I was going to live this long, I'd take better care of myself.
Hey, you want to play? Do
See how that goes. See.
5 to 7 o'clock.
Jack, did you sign that? Did you sign that? Did you sign that?
You get everybody moving. It is on the table.
Well, they got the
Coming back tomorrow.
The DNR maybe you have a meeting and say, we're going to get up at 5. Half hour, we're not going to get done. Man, walk up, turn around and come back. These other ones, they have water and sewer.
Yeah. We're friends? Oh yeah, I saw that. I did see that.
I hope you saw it. You're the one
I sent it to you, but I didn't see the return until just well, you just become a regular, haven't you? I got no place to go. When we lived in Texas, we were that way. Hey Jack, how you doing?
I've got all those others.
So all the challenges, tennis
now I can't finish that. I know there's but regardless of the battle, I don't have it over there. But regardless, we've got a 12-13 process over there. I'm going to take care of it. Thank you for your question.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing? Question.
I don't want to be a part of
One are you aware of what
I just mentioned that. Wanted us to look at
down it's called right to work.
that's a barrier. There's regard to the park. Federal guidelines.
How you doing?
Have access.
The other thing is figure.
Like, I'll know later.
Yeah, you will. When they put the figure 44 something $1 value, that's they just take the rent. They extended it to 10 years. That's not the true value. Market value. That's the rent value, but it's not the market value. But the building itself. Yeah. If they decide to pull out. Well, I think something like this. We're not going to go back to work. Like
They're the ones that have identified.
Get some dialogue.
State property. State property. I didn't know about it. You're right. Everybody has property. Drew up the plan.
if we default, our bond rate goes like that. Although we can get out. I think you're going to ask for
Yeah, they're up in New York right now.
They're the ones that and we're the first department on the list. Okay, the ideal for expansion.
it is.
They thought this is sell up a building and build it fairly quickly. And then there's
We have so much more area.
so it eliminates a lot of barriers.
The parking, I'm glad that's an issue. That's the way
Going good. It's neat to love. Me too.
There are federal guidelines for ADA. They would mention they would go to parking. How that would come out.
not real good out there.
And I don't worry about
I think we'll get it done, but we can
I just don't know where they're not in a selfish way, it's just allow access to our customers.
don't get discouraged.
I want to read the section.
That's interesting. That's 3 ways to look at it. I don't know. They can see revenue produced. Well, they had an amortization. Yeah, they got that.
Some of them
Well, the mayor did a
Well, I heard some.
Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's,
That's what I hate to do.
Hey, how are you?
some of you don't want to endure any more of this, we have to, so. Get started and call the meeting to order. This is our regular council meeting, Thursday, February the 16th, 2012. And if you would, please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance and remain standing for the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone's bow, please. Father, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for all the things that you give us. The freedom to assemble, the freedom to issue what we think and how we want to continue here in the city of Canton. We ask that you be with us and help us to make the right decisions concerning all of our citizens. All these things we pray in your name. Amen.
I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda. I think there is some changes that may need to be made.
Mr. Mayor, I ask under the consent agenda that items B, C, and F be pulled out for discussion on their own, and discussion and whatever that leads to on their own. In addition, under new business, item A, I ask that that be postponed because we just got the agreement, and I would like to have discussion as what is normal, has been normal procedure, be held during the work sessions and be postponed until March 1st. Another addition under council introduced items, I'd like to make a very short statement relative to the previously discussed council voted on item audit of software systems controls. And those are changes to the agenda that I would like to ask for.
Is that in the form of a motion?
Yes, sir.
Have a motion, and have a second.
Second.
Okay. Any other?
Yes. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add a discussion on the rat kits that's been circulating around the city quite aggressively the past few days, and I'd like to add that to the agenda.
Do you want to add that to the, which part of the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, that is under the
Business?
public, it's going to be under the public, but we're going to have the full discussion at that time, or we want to add that to the agenda to place a motion.
I think if you're anticipating some sort of action or recommendation, you might want to amend the agenda to accommodate that part of it.
Okay.
Okay, well, then we would put that under new business. Item D under new business, I guess, the red fields. Okay, any others?
Now, Etowah Park, are you looking at under this motion?
So it's removed for individual.
Well, that one has been pulled from the consent agenda. Okay, I don't have an updated agenda, then, I guess.
Okay.
Well, maybe I've got an update.
Well, he covered Etowah.
Yes.
I beg your pardon. Yeah, my fault. Okay, those in favor of those amendments to the agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay, all members voted for the motion. So we'll have to kind of keep this straight because we pulled several here. I'll try to keep up with that. Certainly want to welcome everyone here tonight, and we will begin by our 10-minute public input period. And we do have, if we may, I would like to suggest that Zach Kell come first, since I think he's going to be very brief, and then we'll have the presentation by Sergeant Bailey and Ms. Cummings. I think he's got to get back to the restaurant.
Thanks for the time. Just wanted to kind of open up some dialogue and communication for the council to take in the upcoming work session. There's an ordinance that states during private events, not private events, I'm sorry, public events that are held in downtown Canton, historic downtown Canton, there is a alcohol ordinance that kind of sections off a part of the event, i.e. however you can section it off. You know, in the past, we've seen caution tape or, you know, yellow or orange construction tape. And the people who purchase and consume the alcoholic beverages have to stay in that refined area. So, for an example, if you're at the arts festival that's coming up, you got your wife, your 2 kids, stop and you get a beer, you have to stay in that area and drink the beer before you can continue shopping with your wife and your 2 kids. I just kind of want to open up some ideas, maybe if we can have a closed event, if we're shutting down streets, like we do the first Friday that we've been doing, weed meeting. I just own a restaurant that takes place. I don't have any, there's a lot of people who work very hard on putting that event together. If a section of downtown's closed, I kind of would like to see some reasonable assumptions that means that that's closed. So if you buy a beer, you can walk to and from in that closed section and mingle and shop and consume your drink while you're walking with your family and you're shopping and you're listening to music and you're so on and so forth. So you don't have to stay in, I guess, this little timeout area. That's what where kind of people feel like they've been placed in. That's all I got to say. Yeah.
Are you suggesting that when you talk about a section, that the section be expanded to, say, the limits of the business
event
area?
itself? Yeah, the event itself or the business area, meaning, the Canton Arts Festival, it takes up a pretty fair amount of space. I think once you enter that Canton Arts Festival and you go buy a beer, you should be able to stroll that entire Canton Arts Festival while drinking your beer. I think it's got to be, I guess, figured out per event, because all events are different. They all take up different, space requirements. But all I'm saying is it shouldn't be sanctioned to one little spot inside of that larger event, where you.
Yeah, I think each event would have to have a whoever's putting the event on would have to designate the area that would encompass that event.
Absolutely.
And that would have to, be noted at the various streets or whatever, and then that could happen. Originally, as you know, the current one was established, we had nothing prior to three and a half years ago, but it was established as like a beer garden at special events in which only adults could go in, no children could mingle there, anything. Maybe it's time we take the next step here and open it up just a little bit, because it is rather restrictive, to say the least.
It is, and I understand why it was written to begin with, because nobody really had much experience on how this was going to work. And I opened up a restaurant in Atlanta about a year and a half ago, and I worked 5 festivals within the inside the perimeter, and all of them have the same stance. Once you're inside the event, once you buy an alcoholic beverage, you can walk, and you never really see any problems. Mom and dads are walking with their kids. Occasionally towards later into the evening during like the summer fest when they have bands that play till 2 in the morning. But we're not trying to do that. We're just
one thing that I would insist be in there, that there be no glass containers, certainly. And other than that, I think we need to put this on our agenda for the next work session and discuss that.
Are you present? Is it available to have a glass of wine out in front of your place?
It's got to be inside the confined area.
Oh, those little
So we've got
benches?
those benches that are up that are.
Has to be inside those benches?
It's got to be inside those benches. You cannot take it and walk up and down the street.
You can't walk in front of the next store with it.
Yeah, you've got to stay in front of it.
As long as you're within the confines of the width of his building, you can do so.
Taste of Canton is another idea.
Right, be
Prime example.
Yeah, exactly. Taste the camp. You got that little square area there. People would be able to walk and eat and drink at the same time. Hopefully not get rained on like we were this year. Still
Thank you, Zach.
My pleasure. Going to work. Y'all have to do it.
We will discuss that at the next meeting. Sergeant Bailey and Ms. Cummings. And John Hicks.
Sorry, I should have. That's my fault. We're here to talk about RAD kids, and a lot of people are like, what does RAD mean? Resist aggression defensively. I apologize, even it's hard to remember sometimes. My brother told me today that RAD is not cool anymore, and I'm like, well, it stands for something. It's teaching kids the skills they need to protect themselves. Obviously, the ABCs of child victimization are abduction, bullying, child abuse and neglect, and sexual assault. And that's where it's a little bit different. It talks about things that really haven't been spoke about before. And let's face it, it needs to be addressed. It's very important that these children are taught these things. I used to go out and I'd teach stranger danger all the time, and I always left scratching my head because it just was very ineffective. And it bothered me, but I had to do it all the time. You're asked to go out and do that. But every single time, they would do everything that you would tell them not to as soon as you turn your back. So RAD Kids is a little bit different because these children, we wish we had a video for you to see exactly what it is, because it's not just necessarily classroom. It's basically where you're demonstrating. This is like a safety town. You put these kids through it, you teach them, and they learn by seeing, hearing, and then doing. That's where it's different. And it's, it's a good program.
But I guess I just also want to clarify that by some of the pictures that people have seen, either on YouTube or on the internet or even on the RAD Kids website, that it almost looks like a martial art. Some of the pictures you see, the aggressor suit, which is a RAD Kids certified instructor, usually a police officer, that the kids actually use their skills against or practice their skills against. And it's not a martial art, it's not a sport, it doesn't actually teach kids how to fight, but what it does teach is how to escape a dangerous situation. RAD Kids has been around for about 10 years, and they've never had a report of grandma being elbow struck in the face when telling their grandchildren to go to bed, that it was bedtime. So it's never been used inappropriately in school or elsewhere, but it is a fantastic program. And last week we were presenting an introduction to 6th Elementary about the program, and our PowerPoint had a gazillion slides in there about statistics that I'm sure many of you have heard over and over again about the tens of thousands of children that are abducted each year and all the horrific statistics that we're accustomed to hearing in the media. But the two numbers that I think I really hope that you remember this evening are that 83% of the time that a child does exactly what Brittany Baxter did at Walmart a few weeks ago, or I guess it seems like a few weeks ago, but recently, which is resist, yell, kick, scream. We teach, in RAD Kids, we teach to hit hard, yell loud, and run fast. That 83% of the time, the Center for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has reported that kids will escape an attempted abduction. So my goal was to bring my own daughter's chances up from 0 to 83%, and that's what we're hoping to do for the community. The second number is that since RAD Kids has been around, that 81 kids have been saved with RAD Kids, and they document this in a very specific way. It's kind of hard to document something that hasn't happened, but what they do is through family and police reports of children that have actually escaped an abduction event, they have documented 81 situations or 81 cases like that, and 0 reports of any RAD kid ever being hurt in the process. So it's really 100% as far as nobody getting hurt, and 81 kids have been saved. And again, that's what we're hoping to bring to the Canton community and to the Cherokee County area as well.
You're actually empowering these children. You're teaching them that you are important. Nobody has the right to hurt you. And like what I spoke about before with stranger danger, who is a stranger? Most of the time, a lot of these incidents are happening with acquaintances that the children know or even family members. So basically, we lay that out appropriate within the guidelines of the program.
Sergeant Baker.
Yes, sir.
Would you please say that both of you are qualified instructors? You had to go to a course
Yes.
to get qualified, and it's just not some people just running around and say we're going to form a group. This is a real live situation.
Absolutely, sir, and I owe all the credit to Bianca. I do the River Green Neighborhood Watch, and I'm looking here and I see quite a few members from different neighborhood watches and Citizens Police Academy in here. But I've known Bianca for a few years, and she actually was the catalyst for this whole Rad Kids. She brought it to my attention a while back. We discussed it. I remember sitting by the pool one day discussing this whole entire program, and she went in June, correct?
Yes, yes. And absolutely, to answer your question, only certified Rad Kids instructors can actually train the children. We do rely on volunteer support, but they do not provide any actual instruction in the class. And they would be people that we would have screened through the YMCA who were partnering on for a series of classes with background checks. That these individuals are typically other police officers. Actually, for our first class, which is going to be next week, for example, we have certified instructors from the Roswell Police Department that will be participating and assisting us. But yes, absolutely certified Rad Kids instructors.
He was in the class with me, so you start networking and meeting all these other officers, and he lives in Bridge Mill, and it's like her and I, we can go anywhere and teach this, and they're willing to do it because it's such a great program.
Can you explain some of the other things that are taught in Rad Kids other than just defense?
Absolutely, absolutely. The curriculum, of course, includes, as you've heard this evening, escaping from an abduction attempt. But the curriculum is a 10-hour curriculum that's usually taught over a 5-day period. And it includes bullying defenses, or defenses against bullying, as well as internet safety, and just a lot of, just out and about and at home safety skills that, that most children need. Even just the very first class actually makes sure that every kid in that class not only knows to call 911, I think almost all preschoolers even know that that's who you call in an emergency, but there are a lot of kids that actually don't know how to dial 911. So whether a parent is hurt or somebody's in, there's a dangerous situation, but we help them with the curriculum actually go through or navigate through a series of dangerous scenarios.
We also defeat for signing up.
Yes, sir. The reason why that is because this program is very expensive. We have to have certain things every single time to run the program.
You have consumables,
we have
supplies.
Consumables, absolutely.
Yes, we have a combination of expenses, consumable materials for each classroom, and anybody that's worked in education knows, between stickers and name tags and et cetera, crayons, markers, everything that you would need to run a classroom, t-shirts, wristbands, but as well as equipment that we are required to purchase from the Rad Kids organization, especially the safety equipment that the kids are wearing. The last thing we want, of course, is for a child to get hurt during a safety class. But the equipment is, pretty expensive. But we're.
So is that equipment used over and over again?
Yes, the equipment would be, going to our inventory of equipment. So, and we're hoping to have more than one set. For example, the red suit that the aggressor would wear in simulations. We would like to have more than one set of equipment in case we're teaching at multiple locations throughout Cherokee County or in Canton. For example, at an after-school program at Canton Elementary, and then at the YMCA in case we're having conflicting schedules.
Do you have an idea of what the cost would be for what you've got proposed for the March class? Do you have an idea what that cost is?
Okay. The cost for the classes, what we have ballpark right now, we're still in the process. Everything has actually happened so quickly since the tragedy in December with Jorley Rivera. And what we're in the process of doing is developing a business plan that really analyzes and covers a lot of the costs. But the bottom line, what we've been able to come up with is approximately $30 per student to cover the consumable materials for class, and for a set of equipment, roughly $4,000 to $5,000 to have the pads and the shields and the helmets and et cetera.
And we have to pay for t-shirts and wristbands every single time, because the whole point, and we wanted to show a video tonight, the whole point of it, they wear these little wristbands that say Rad Kids, and you're empowering them, making them powerful with these little bands and little shirts they get to wear every day of the class.
So after you have all the equipment that's reused, then the ongoing cost would be somewhere in the $30
Yes, sir.
per child.
I think an important part there is that, as discussed early on, was, as John mentioned, skin in the game, because we don't want to have parents thinking this is a babysitting service and drop them off for a couple hours and leave. So the parents are going to be supportive of this whole program.
help by signing up and saying, yes, we are going to contribute to you.
That is correct. Some of the feedback that I received from experts that, like John, that run children's programming, and bottom line is, if a parent has made an investment, even if it is $20 or $30, that their child will actually be present at a certain activity, there's a lot more incentive to make sure that they're actually there. And the curriculum really builds, each day builds on the previous day, and for a child to miss any part of the curriculum would really sabotage their success in being able to learn what they need to learn. But I just, if it's okay, I'd like to just backtrack just for one step as far as what the program is, because this is really the most important piece of the program. If you go on the national website for RADKids, radkids.org, everywhere that the RADKids logo appears, the tagline for RADKids is personal empowerment safety education. And what that means is that we're not just teaching kids how to throw an elbow strike, but the biggest part is that the kid has that feeling that they would have when the first time that they hit a home run, that I got this, I can really do this. They need to believe that there is that they're special. And the 3 founding principles of RADKids are, number 1, that no one has the right to hurt you because you are special. And and I know I felt that growing up, but I don't know that anybody ever looked me in the eye and actually held me and said that, directly to me. And we want to make sure that every kid realizes that, because number 2, as a RADKid, they do not have the right to hurt anyone else, including themselves, and unless someone is trying to hurt them. And this part is really important, because now for the first time they're probably getting permission to have a physical interaction with another individual, regardless of whether they're 5 years old or 105, but they have the right to stop somebody from hurting them. And the third rule is that if somebody does hurt them or trick them, it's not their fault. And this is very, very important, because a lot of predators of child abuse, even bullies in school, will use the guilt of, it's your fault, you're going to get in trouble, right, or I'm threatening the family, threatening their friends. There's a lot of threats that go on with any type of predator, and so it's not your fault. This rule is very, very important. And so the entire program continues to build on those 3 founding principles, foundational principles, so that the kids receive the empowerment to fulfill the skills. So in a moment of danger or a dangerous situation, they react instinctively in a way that's going to be successful, as opposed to panicking.
We're going to talk about this later in the agenda, but I would like to ask Mr. Hicks, who's the director of the YMCA, the role of the Y.
Well, when Bianca and Stacy and Mr. Beershire came to us about the program, we immediately said, we want to be a part of this, we'll help out however we can. So we're working directly with them. We're actually using our staff to collect all the registration to get kids signed up, and we're going to host the trainings for February, March, and April, and probably going forward. Those are all things that we're doing. And we're not, this is not for us to make money. This is for us to do our job serving the community, which is what we're going to do. And then we're going to work with them, because these questions about pricing, how much does it cost, what's the best way to manage that, we're going to be working with them to help really resolve a lot of those things. It's brand new. We really don't know exactly what it costs, but we do need to know the true cost. If you had to pay real dollars for everything, and then you want to know what you really have to make it work, and then that helps you figure out what your pricing is, and then you got to build a really good structure so that those kids that, if it's $25 or $35, if those kids that can't afford that, you have a way to make sure they have access to it, so that everybody has access to the program.
2 questions or point. One on the red suit. We have one, or?
You can't use that. That's the only drawback to this program, that you have to use their approved certified equipment.
Well, that's fine.
Yes, sir.
Do we have right now only one?
We don't have any.
Okay, we've got to have them, because classes are coming up.
Well, the class for next week, we have a certified instructor that's been doing this for several years, actually wearing the red suit, that's from Johns Creek, that's volunteered to come and help us with our classes until we have our red suit.
We need 2. Is that right? Both of you certified, so we need 2.
Yes, sir, and it's because really you can only have 1 instructor for 10 children. I mean, they make it.
Right,
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes, sir.
One other thing, and if I'm not divulging anything personal on your side, would you tell the council about your daughter and how well she was trained by you at a young age
to resist anybody coming up and offering her anything. What happened to, she went to?
Yes. And really that was the catalyst for me pursuing Rad Kids. I was not brand specific. I just, I have an only child and only have one chance here. I don't have a backup plan with another kid, but I do love her and I've always wanted to protect her. And I was really excited in between preschool and kindergarten that summer that she had the opportunity to go to Safety Town. I totally believe that the Safety Town folks are very well intentioned and provided the best program with the information that they had at the time. But as excited as I was about going to Safety Town, I was disappointed on the Stranger Danger Day because for the first 5 years of her life, I had been coaching her. I knew she was going to succeed and do really well in that segment of the Safety Town. And when she returned home, I was disappointed to find that the flyer had a check mark in the box that said, please talk to your daughter about stranger danger, and that she took the candy from the stranger and left with the stranger in their simulation. Not her fault, and again, I really feel that Safety Town was very well intentioned in what they were trying to do, but I felt helpless as a parent because I had already talked to her, and other than the flyer with the check boxes, I did not receive any further instruction or guidance on how to better communicate to her. And that was my motivation for really going out there and becoming a certified instructor, because it was not acceptable to me that this program was not available even in a neighboring county to Cherokee County, and I wanted to see my daughter and all of the children in our community have this program available. Yeah.
This program is available to any children, regardless of whether they're Canton, Woodstock, Cherokee County,
Yeah.
Pickens, Gilmer, any county, anywhere.
Absolutely, sir,
Okay.
yes. We're not going to turn anybody away. We're not going to turn anybody away reference financial. Can we mention one really big thing that's going on, and maybe some of you might have read about it? Elizabeth Smart and Ed Smart, along with Steve Daly and also Keep Georgia Safe, are coming the 12th through the 16th here in March for Get Smart Across America. And we are going to be working side by side with them for an entire week. And we are just honored to have the privilege of that, and she can talk about it more. But John Hicks has gone above and beyond with the YMCA more than he has even had to, and his entire staff, to make this happen. I mean, a true partnership with us, and not really, zero asking for anything in return. So I don't know if you want to talk about what the...
You want to talk about it?
Yeah.
Well, just to describe a little bit about what it is, Elizabeth Smart has a foundation. As many of you may remember, she was the 14-year-old that was abducted from her Utah bedroom about 10 years ago and was rescued about 9 months later. And her father became a board member of Rad Kids. After her rescue, he decided that he needed to do something better for his children and put all 5 of his children through the Rad Kids program. Was so impressed with it. Since then, he's not only been an advocate for Rad Kids, he's been a board member. Elizabeth Smart now is a big advocate for children's safety and trying to, working very hard to prevent the victimization of children. She is the Elizabeth Smart Foundation, as well as the Rad Kids organization, both nonprofits, have a very close relationship with Keep Georgia Safe, which makes us a very, very lucky community because of our relationship with Keep Georgia Safe, and really just a heartbreak that I think that even the nation has felt over the Dorleys Rivera tragedy. Elizabeth Smart has started an initiative called Get Smart Across America, where she is going to be visiting different communities across the country to not just bring a message of hope. I mean, that is the main thing that she's doing, but the message of hope is actually going to contain or include some very concrete actions that she wants to deliver, including a Rad Kids class, which is going to be delivered here in March. That's the March class, and Steve Daly, the founder of Rad Kids, is going to be a co-instructor with Stacy and I. As well as, which is what I think a really big deal for the Canton community, a community safety seminar for all the residents and parents and educators, anybody that's interested in children's safety. And this is going to be a seminar where Steve Daly, the founder of Rad Kids, Ed Smart, Elizabeth Smart, Gary Martin Hayes, the founder of Keep Georgia Safe, as well as the executive director of Keep Georgia Safe, Mary Ellen Folkus, are all going to be presenters speaking about children's safety. And this event is going to be on March 14th. John Hicks has been very generous in his efforts in trying to help us acquire a venue for this big event. And it's going to be at the Cherokee County Conference Center. We're very, very grateful and excited about that. And, you know, some of the reasons this is really, really important, you know, first and foremost is because we're hoping that this will help move our community on a path of healing after this tremendous heartbreak that we've all felt. And secondly, it's going to draw a lot of national as well as local media attention. Elizabeth Smart and Keep Georgia Safe have a very close relationship with several big media organizations. And we're not at this point at liberty to really, as tempting as it is to really share which specific organizations are going to be involved, but there will definitely be national media here. And so
That's great.
and so I'm feeling a lot more confident and well prepared because of the conference center. But as I said a second ago, most importantly, it's what we're going to be able to give to the Canton communities, to the families, because I know as a Rad Kids instructor that, you know, in spite of what's happened to Jorleys, that prior to becoming an instructor, all of the stories that were just like Jorleys, all they did was leave me more helpless and devastated and hopeless about the future of, you know, all the people in this world that were going to try to hurt my baby. And then, you know, since becoming an instructor, I have realized that she really stands a chance out there, not just now when she's 8, while she's 8, but she is not going to be the next Natalie Holloway when she's a teenager. She is not going to be an abused spouse when she grows up. And she is, you know, she is not going to be a victim at any point in her life because of the empowerment that she has learned in this program. And that's the gift that Elizabeth Smart, Ed Smart, Keep Georgia Safe, Rad Kids, and Stacy and I, and now, you know, thanks to John and his partnership and assistance with the YMCA, is what we're really working so hard to bring to the Canton families.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
A little later on in the meeting, see what we can do to assist that effort.
Thank you. Thank you.
Under the consent agenda, we have removed items B, C, and F. And we need to remove also, of course we didn't, did we?
No. B?
J actually needs to remove item J as well. So do I have a motion that we remove that, which I understand the attorney is not quite ready for that.
The surveys haven't come in, so there'll be nothing to take action on.
J is on your computer there if you're looking at it. If not, you get to have an amended agenda. We have a motion to remove that. It's the again, reservoir mitigation condemnations, change condemnations to P simple taking. Have a motion second. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. We have removed B, C, F, and J. The others, and if there are others that need to be removed, we have the approval of the minutes of February the 2nd of 2012. We have the approval of the rebate and water conservation programs, which we have talked about extensively. Approval of the water billing ordinance. Approval of the resolution to adopt the annual update capital improvements element of the 5-year short-term work plan. We have the approval of the resolution to submit pre-application of the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant. And we have the approval of the resolution to describe to the ethics principles as set forth in the Georgia Municipal Association. And I believe that would be it. Is there a motion that we approve those items?
So moved. Yep.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Mayor, one thing,
Yes.
on the resolution, I would like to have that signature signed tonight. We're here, we got it.
Well, we can do that.
Well, it slipped through the cracks.
Oh, okay. The ethics resolution.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So
we need, what he's saying is we need to make sure that is signed before we leave here by each councilman. Okay. Okay, well, back up to item D, which we pulled from the consent agenda. Approval of the December financials.
Mr. Mayor, I've always had a problem with this because we use the word approval. These are unaudited financials, and one, I'd like to, just as make a motion that we remove them from the consent agenda, number one, And number two, that we change what we are voting on to acknowledge the receipt of unaudited financials through that month that is provided us. And the reason, that's my motion.
Second. We have a motion and a second to, instead of approval of the financials on a monthly basis, we will note that we have received them and basically not approve them per se, but actually it's for informational purposes as far as the council is concerned.
And it would remain in our packet.
Right.
For discussion, but it would not have to be
Absolutely.
voted upon during that.
It's an acknowledgement, and the basic logic behind that, since we now have a motion and a second, the basic logic behind that is we can't approve them because we don't know the contents of them. So we're actually, by approval, saying that they are correct and accurate, and we don't know that. And therefore, we're reviewing them and we're accepting them at that point in time. Really, the only time we can do that is when they get audited at the year end, and we go through the audit and say, yes, we do approve what's been submitted to us through an audit function.
And we do approve them at that time too. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Item C, approval of the leak adjustment policy.
I'd like to ask that that be postponed. The reasoning is when we started going into the policy as it's contained in here for a vote tonight, it gets a little bit complicated and a little confusing as to how you actually arrive at it. There's also a question of fairness involved. But my motion is to postpone, and I can go into detail after if it's seconded.
So we will deal with this at a future work session anyway, so.
That is correct.
Yeah. We have a motion and a second to postpone item C. Any other discussion? If not, any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Item F, approval of the Etowah Killian Park Plan.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cummings?
Let me get to where I got that. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the intent to have two separate parks. One developed by the county containing 5 baseball fields as heretofore presented, and one located at the Etowah Park to be redesigned minus the baseball fields, subject to the following stipulations. Both park projects will be bid as an inseparable project, but will contain separate detailed costs identified by park. Second, all optional alternatives desired for the Etowah Park will have separate standalone bids provided by the bidders. And third, the city of Canton will have the right and authority to review and approve or reject the bids in advance of any contractual award. That is my motion.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any other questions, discussion? Just like that. Mr. Goodman? Go ahead.
I'd like to see if the county has anything to add to that, because they're hearing this and they're gonna be covered with it. I didn't know if Mr. Eccles might want, or Commissioner Johnson, either one might want to speak to that.
He's asking if you have any questions about, I guess, about the motion.
Motion, is there any part of that you all could not go along with, or would not, to make it harder for us to get this on and get it built?
Let me confirm what I've heard, and then let me ask for one clarification. I heard that you want us to bid it together. I fully agree and support that. Separate accounting, for accounting purposes only, we would separate it, but it would still be one contract. We agree with that. That will help us greatly in payment processing. Options for the bid alternates, yes. All of the work, all of the alternates that we've been discussing at Etowah will be bid. We'll have a separate bid alternate for the trails to bowling and all of the other items that we've been discussing on Etowah. And then certainly the decision to pass it back through city council so that I have that resolution to take to the commission. I wholeheartedly support that. Yes.
Did I understand that the alternates, would they stand alone?
It should be standalone. I think the problem that we don't want to run into is that when they bid the alternates, that they come up with a figure that should we decide that we can't include it because we don't have enough funds to include it, that if we go down the road 6 months or a year later, that they say, oh, wait a minute, we put that number in there because we were doing it at the same time. So what I'm trying to accomplish is that if you're looking at the alternatives, that they should be standalone, and if we have sufficient funds, we as a council can then vote which ones we want to include into the entire project at its inception, and we have a bid for the alternatives that we can't include maybe at that time, but we could come 6 months later and say, we now do have funds, let's move ahead with that. Because otherwise it might get confusing if we said to if the bidder came back to us and says, oh yeah, I did say that the bridge would be X amount of dollars, but that was contingent upon me doing it at the same time. And I want to sort of separate that out, that we have a fixed number to do the bridge, whether it's done at the same time or 6 or 12 months later. It might be adjusted for some changes that occurred in the time frame between when it was originally bid or stipulated and the time we decided to move forward with it.
Mayor and Council, my understanding of the way that the bid laws in Georgia for construction operate, we would not be able to allow those alternates to be a freestanding, to be added later under a separate contract. What we will do is we'll have the base bid and we'll have to add alternates. And when we receive those bids, I will then bring that to the city council, or there'll be a discussion at the work session. We'll know what that base bid is. We'll know what each of the individual separate alternates will be. And I would imagine there could be anywhere from 7 to 8 of those. There will then be a discussion at the workshop of which ones do you want in your priority, and we'll go down that priority and take as many as council wants added to the base bid, so long as it's under the budget.
I understand.
But let's say that we're not able to take alternate 7 and 8. We will not be able to come back 6 months, 8 months later under a different contract. To do.
I understand.
We just aren't able to. Now we can, and we have done where we could maybe postpone an acceptance, but even that gets to be difficult, because if at the time we accept the base bid and the alternates, I have seen it where accepting certain alternates can change who is the base bid. Just because the low person for the base bid, if you accept alternates 1, 2, and 3, could change the balance of who is the low bidder.
And that's what you just explained is one thing that I wanted to prevent, is that we could be looking at just the 2 parks and we could have a low bidder, but when we added an alternative that was within the total amount to be expended, could change who got the base bid, because they might not be lower in total amount than if just the 2 parks were considered.
But we'll know that at the time, and that will be the basis of awards will be the base bid plus the accepted alternates at the time of the approval of the bid, and that will be the basis of the contract. And then the other alternates that aren't accepted basically have to fall away. But you'll still have a design that if you later wanted to bid this as a separate design in the future, HDR will have prepared, and the city will own those designs future. Now, yes, sir.
Hold on, Mr.
In a memo I got today, we had a little confusion here, and I just want to make sure that we're talking about 2 200-foot ball diamonds and 3 175-foot.
I understand.
It was switched
two 250s.
Two?
Yes.
2 250s and 3 175s.
That is fine.
Because there was another one floating around that was 4 diamonds. We're going to have 5 diamonds. Thank you.
It will not be a perfect, but it will have 5 fields, like I said, half of it will be 2 250s, and then the other 3 will fan out.
And we're gonna get 4 fields on the Etowah Park.
There will be no baseball fields.
No 4 soccer fields where we're gonna take out that upper loop of the walking path and turn the fields to where we can get 4 rather than 3.
Yes, sir, Mr. Huffman. We can look at that as a part of the details, because what HDR is going to have to include in their revised fee is that they're going to have to run some new no-rise calculations on what the improvements to the park does and how it affects the flow of the Etowah River.
We did talk about that as doing that, maybe it's a change order or something, didn't we? At the time?
That's what Robbie said. Robbie said it would be a very easy change order to do later, just to remove the sidewalk. It was half
Yes,
your
okay,
length.
in those terms, I'd like to, yeah, at some point. But the devil will be in the details of working all of that. That certainly is something that we can look at, that HDR would like to look at, and then we can report back to Mr. Wood as we're doing designs as we go forward.
We need fields rather than another walking path over the top.
Okay.
They had walking paths around both sides.
Yes. This is a large.
Commissioner Johnson's here, and I'd certainly like to ask him for any comments he might have on this issue. Thanks for being here.
I don't have much to say, but
All the better.
I didn't mean to be disappointed about that. My point was just going to be, I don't think anyone on the Board of Commissioners would have any issues with the stipulations that you guys have attached to your motion.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
So let me ask a simple question.
Okay.
Are we moving ahead?
If you vote.
We have.
And we have
The
and
motion,
we do have
have a motion, got a second, let's vote.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion.
Don't worry.
And we're moving ahead. I believe we're down to old business. The request of racetrack was withdrawn relative to water and sewer service just outside our service delivery district, so that one has been withdrawn. Item B, approval of public-private partnership with Forum Municipal Development Services.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make the motion that we postpone this issue to the next work session to further discuss it.
We have a motion to postpone for further discussion.
I will make that second, but now that we've made the second, I'd like to say that I have been informed that due to ADA requirements for parking, that the Jones building would not fit into that. It would not figure in.
Okay. I think we still have a couple of unanswered questions there that we need to get resolved, maybe more.
We do need to do it quick, though.
Oh, absolutely. We can always call a special meeting if we had to once we get the answers, and I think one of the answers has to do with what would happen if the lease were terminated and we decided to let it go back. City didn't want to keep it up. How would that affect? We've had some input that it would negatively affect your credit rating, but okay.
I was just gonna ask Attorney if he had been working back and forth with him, if he had any on something that was arrived.
No, all that's happened since the work session is that I've received the proposed documents and started reviewing them. There was some talk about doing a call meeting on March 1st. There's also advertised for a public hearing. There's a public hearing component to this because it's a lease purchase deal. So they've advertised for the public hearing to be held in the work session, which is not your approving anything. That's just a public hearing. And then I think everybody's headed towards perhaps a call meeting on March 1st to approve the contracts. But you don't have to do that either. We can decide that later. But that was the plan.
I know we have Ms. Leiber here. If anyone has any particular questions.
I still have, the issues are the reason that I asked for postponement to discussion on that are, number one, we don't know if the state walks away, what impact that has on our credit rating should we turn the building back to the financier. Number two, I'm still sort of vague on these set-asides for unanticipated expenses. I'm being told that it's a revenue neutral, cost neutral thing to the city, but I'd like to see the fine print that that there is insurance, that should we not have reserves set aside for an event that occurs to that building, that somebody else besides the city is going to pay to fix that building. Number three, we're looking at $3.7 million for a 20,000 square foot building. That equates to about $185 a square foot, which seems an extensively high amount to me. Are we incurring a liability for an asset that has a significant value below what we're incurring a liability potentially for? That question hasn't been answered. So there are probably 5 or 6 more questions that I could come up with, and that's why I would like to postpone it for discussion at a later time.
Mr. Mayor, can I address where it's headed? I mean, I don't think it was right for you to make any decision tonight anyway. You don't have anything to look at. But I have a little better understanding of the way it's structured now. The way the deal is structured is the building authority would make the deal with the bank. The cities would just be a lessee of the building authority and then sublease it to the state. So the money flow is state, the city, the building authority, the bank. The building authority then transfers to the bank its rights under the lease with the city. So only if, I don't think the city's credit is really even pledged, so I'm not sure how it would affect credit. Those are good questions to answer, but that would be my question. Is this just a lease obligation that we can terminate every year? It's a lease purchase. It's a lease purchase. We are purchasing the land, and each year you can choose not to go forward with it. So I don't know how that would impact your credit.
I guess the point is I don't have the answers to the questions, and I think we should have those answers before we decide to go ahead.
Does the building authority have any sort of credit rating?
I don't know.
See, that's the question too. I mean, it may not negatively affect the city, but what about the building authority, which in essence is the city?
I think my guess would be that when the building authority's done bonds, it's based on the city's credit, not the building authority's.
Yeah, I can agree with you. We got no way of thinking that. Okay. All right, Jack?
I did speak with Mr. Stansel, who's head of the state building authority, and he assured me that this is something that's done quite often, and usually is a good thing for the city as well as defects or a prison or whatever else might be being built. Again, if anybody has any questions, Mr. Library back here, should be glad to answer them. I don't know.
That's good. Well, maybe he could come up with some of the answers that we're seeking. If you,
that's possible. If somebody wants to write those down, I'll be glad to call them. And I'll pass them on to the attorneys at Austin Bird, and I'm sure they'll get us answers quickly.
Okay. Well, let's do that.
And the documents will answer the other questions.
But when it comes down to the market price of that we were talking about earlier, I don't know if the attorneys can answer that or not.
Well, I had a conversation with the attorney. There's been an appraisal, and apparently the bank is satisfied with the appraisal.
It was
so would that be available to us?
Eventually, sure. I mean,
well, I think we would certainly want to see that, because it would be based, it would appear to me that it might be based solely on the income stream and the quality of that income stream based on a long-term lease, admittedly a year in advance, a year at a time, I guess. But if that stream were to be interrupted, what's the likelihood you'd be able to lease it? What kind of vacancy losses or time you'd have to lease it back up and so forth like that? That would might well change the value of that. But today, particularly, the income approach certainly a good way to do it, but today the market for office space and so forth may not be what it was at one time, and particularly the value of the building is certainly not what it would have been 5 or 6 years ago, for sure. I think we need those questions answered.
And we know that the bank is the one holding the note on that.
Right.
So they can do most anything to get it off their books.
Right. Sure.
I'd like to ask Ms. Liber, she's standing there, if she has anything to come up and say.
I would just, not that this will give you any more comfort, but it may give you some more information. I certainly want you to be informed. Just a couple of things. I'm certainly no architect or no contractor, I'm a social worker, and I just know we need a better building. Okay, and I think our citizens do as well. Cherokee County is the #1 county on the state's list for a new building for the state of Georgia. It's a line item in the legislature. So State Properties is looking for a building, and they're the ones that contacted me about the Kimberly Way property. We did not seek that out as a local agency. We were informed that this is the building the State Properties has identified for our growth. So I feel like in a way, I'm kind of caught in the middle of State Properties and local government, and whatever I can do to inform you or give you comfort about the information, I certainly want to do. But as I said, I'm a social worker, I run the department, and I know we need a bigger and better building for our staff and our citizens. I know we've been there for 20 years, I've been there for 5, the state has paid the rent every month, but for 20 years, so the state, it would be unprecedented, I believe, for the state not to pay the rent on a monthly basis. So I don't know if that helps your decision.
Let me ask you a question. If the state contacted y'all, how did the other party get involved there?
They put a bid out, contractors to bid on the property, and they won the contract.
Okay.
They have the state contract to build out the building.
Okay. Just that particular building?
Correct.
Okay.
That's the only building under contract for the department. I know there are some other buildings locally being discussed, but the state.
You know what that is under contract for? Price-wise?
I don't.
Okay.
I think
I
all
know
of
they put
us,
a lot of money in.
Mr.
Certainly.
Mayor, I think all of us are in favor of having it. It is just that there's a lot of unanswered questions that, in terms of the financial aspects of it, that we really need to have answered before we proceed to do anything about it.
And anything I can do to give you that or relay the information, I'd be happy to be the mediator for that, facilitate a meeting, or do whatever I need to do to help you in your decision making.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a motion and a second, I believe, to postpone this until the work session, March 1. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All in opposed.
So who are we going to depend on to deliver the information to us?
I think, but Mr. Mayor, if I may make a suggestion, I think the forum people need to come back out here to whoever wants to sit down with them and let them answer all those questions. And I know they'd be happy to do that. They asked whether they needed to come tonight, and I thought
Would they
nothing
know
was
the
gonna
answer?
happen, so I
But
told them.
would they know the answer to the credit situation?
I'm sure they.
Why don't each one of us form questions and center it to one particular council member that can obtain the answers? That would be my suggestion, Mr. Mayor.
Repeat.
Each one of us formulate what questions we each have, and then you designate one of the council members to obtain the answers.
Just my 2 cents again. Let's be clear, this is not a debt obligation of the city.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lease purchase with annual rights to back out. So it is not a debt.
It's a win-win for the city, and that's what we should look at it that way, and, you know.
I don't know how it affects their credit.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess the one
who owns
question I have,
building? Canton Building Authority would own the
The
building?
Canton Building Authority will take title to the property.
So if they let it go back to the bank has to take it over, it's not worth what they paid for it or what it's what's owed on it, is that a problem? That's my question.
But again, and maybe I don't understand either, but if it's not a debt, I don't understand how it can affect your credit.
Well, it's a mortgage, it's a loan.
It's not a debt for the city. That's what, this is a specialized transaction. It's all lease purchases that are not debts. The bank it's not a loan, the bank probably books it as a loan, but they're taking a security interest in the property, so it's a loan, but even the building authority is not indebted to the bank.
And I think that another point is that the state has brought the program forward by having this particular group selected, winning the bid, and bringing it on down. So it's not like we're going to reinvent the wheel. It's a program that has been done numerous times. Yeah, and it's, but I know we're hesitant to jump on another thing that the building authority signs off on, but
that's part of the issue. The other issue is the ongoing operational costs. They set aside a specific amount each month for what they call, I don't know what they call it, but it's like maintenance. And then they have contractual agreements. My issue is with what is set aside, if that's insufficient to handle a particular problem with the building, should something fail, who's responsible for fixing that? Let's say we have an overage of the reserve that's set aside at $20,000. Is it the city's responsibility to foot that $20,000? Or is there something in the agreement that says the state will pony up $20,000, or who's going to pony up that $20,000? I don't know the answer to that, and I'd like the answer to it.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to ask if you would be kind enough to appoint Councilman Cummings to spearhead that organization. He seems to have in-depth questions that need to be answered. I'm comfortable, and I trust him to dig down deep enough to get it resolved.
I totally agree with that. I would suggest, however, that each council member, Mr. Wood or others here that may have particular questions, email those to Mr. Cummings and get.
Please do it shortly. I'll be away for 10 days.
It's coming, we
Gotta
might
do it
be at
quickly.
the work session, so we need to do that ASAP.
Yeah. So you got your work cut out for you. All right.
Working the debt.
Let's move on now to, let's see.
See.
C, now discussion of First Amendment to Development Agreement with Northside Hospital. Item C. Ms. Cummings.
I make the motion that the request for the amendment to the development agreement be denied.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
I would like to know what is the issue for a discussion.
By approving it, we're creating a additional variance to our ordinance. We already have an ordinance how the hospital or any developer can be reimbursed based upon infrastructure improvements, and that ordinance is in sequence of impact fee credits and then impact fees received by the city from the service area in which that infrastructure is. We are currently faced with financial challenges, and that if we make this amendment, it reverses the order in which we reimburse by putting impact fees received from other sources preceding impact fee credits, which is again a variance to the ordinance. Because we're so financially challenged at this particular time, I don't see that we should vary an ordinance that would create additional stress on our cash flow. The other reason is we have no way of knowing at this time that the prescribed method of using impact fee credits would not be sufficient in order to handle the reimbursement. The third is the city has no control over the timing of the construction or the flow of those impact fee credits. Those are the reasons why I'm against amending the contract or the agreement.
Jack? I'd like to ask Mr. Hostel and Mr. Haynes if they'd like to come up and speak to that. If they're both in the audience.
You made a motion, we have a second, and we're in the discussion phase now. And if you have any questions,
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember, your impact, one issue that I have with what you were saying, the collection within a certain service district, impact fee ordinance, section 110-183, road development impact fee service areas. There is hereby established one road development impact fee service area which shall cover the entire incorporated area of the city. There are no districts in your impact fee ordinance. When you pass the roadway impact fee, it covers everything within the city of Canton. Your current, and I might add, the agreement that we had a meeting with the city April 15th of 2010 with Mr. Wood, Mr. Dyer, and all staff members and legal counsel, of which the amendment to our agreement was suggested by your legal counsel to put together a percentage of how the funds were going to be distributed. Mr. Dyer then proceeded to go ahead and we perfected a document to where it defined the percentages of how any project on your CIE would be distributed, the funds would be distributed. And state law requires that your projects on the CIE, as money is collected on the road impact fee, will be distributed into each one of those system improvements or road improvement projects based upon its percentage of the overall CIE. So to make this as plain as I can, following Mr. Dyer's percentages, is that you've got a CIE right now that's got a series of projects on there that total $40 million. Our cost in that is roughly $8 million, which is 20.28%. Our project cost is 34% of that number. And therefore, let's just use the example of every $100,000 that is collected in road impact fees, 20.28% would be designated towards the project, and then of that 20%, 34% of that would come back to the person that paid for the system improvement. By your ordinance and by state law, it requires you that when road impact fee dollars are collected, that your CIE distributes those funds per project. So in essence, you have an account that has road impact fee funds in it, and those dollars are designated for those projects, for those system improvements. Our contract that we entered into, when Northside spent $2.9 million to put in that section of that road that you see there now, was under the contract that you have before you, and I'm sure you reviewed. The intent of that contract was to say that anything, if there were not impact fee credits at the end of each year that would have paid back that percentage, and it was collected elsewhere within that service district, then it would come back to not only us, but other people that have put money in to construct the road. It was then determined to clarify, not to change. This amendment was never an intent to change what that document said. This was a redefinition of which your staff directed since April of 2010. So I believe that we are in keeping with not only the state law, but your ordinance, and at the direct of your council. So I respectfully request you to reconsider your motion.
Mr. Mayor?
yes.
Based on consultation with Mr. Dyer, I will quote Mr. Dyer, to the extent that the proposed amendment provides for payment of money prior to knowing whether the cost of the project exceeds the amount of the impact fees which will be owed. It is a variance to the impact fee ordinance, section 110-185, is a restatement, which is a restatement of the state law. So from what legal advice I've received is that we would be making a variance to the ordinance as is currently stated. Isn't that correct?
Yes, and I guess Mr. Osgood accurately stated what happened, but what happened was, it was my understanding that the intent was in the original agreement, and once we established that, in my opinion, you did have to change it because it didn't say that in the original agreement. So that's how we got here.
You know, good intentions lead you in wrong directions. And of course, I think that the intent was that we would have begun construction long before now, too. And then I think when that agreement was struck, that the intention that the ground would already be broken was thought to be the case.
Okay, we have a motion, and we have a second.
Yes, yes.
And you want to restate that motion?
Yes, sir.
You recommend the
motion is that
denial?
the request for amendment to the development agreement be denied. So a yes would be a denial.
And we would then go back to the existing agreement as it is.
I'm still not clear. We're both quoting ordinance, our ordinance. Which, are they saying different things? Or?
Who you asking?
Well,
The agreement basically says
we
that.
got two.
We have an attorney here, we could probably ask him.
They were talking about two different provisions. Mr. Hospital was talking about the service area. Mr. Cummins is talking about what you're allowed to do in the development agreement. And it says you do impact fee credits, then to the extent that the credits are less than the total cost, you reimburse funds.
And
the question is the timing of that. That's what this amendment is addressing.
If you read literally the agreement as it now stands, we'd have to give impact fee credits first. Is that not correct?
That's how we got here. There was a disagreement apparently about what it said or what it meant.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
What do we have in at the bank right now of impact fee credits? Or do we have impact fees? And if we do have any, is the amount sufficient enough to take care of the need until the road is put in and we start getting impact fees, credits issued for the completion of that road down to 140? If that's the case, then we can hold off. In other words, I don't think we have any money. So we say, we're going to give you impact fee credits. You're putting in the road, and then we'll give you those credits. Anything that comes up along that road, as you put in clinics or drugstores or theaters or anything, because it's a beautiful piece of property and it's a great impact, and it will drive the business. But if we don't have any money, if we have 50,000,
I think what the bottom line is that they're looking for us to write a check for around $30,000. Is that correct, Tommy?
I don't know. Depending on what the numbers were in impact fee collections, I don't know what the collections were.
But, you know, it's more or less around that amount, is it not?
I don't, because it's...
Well, it's not $15.
No, it is thousands of dollars. It starts with the total collected, and I just don't know that number, so.
May I make a comment?
Please.
Is that once those impact fees are collected and put in the road impact fee bank account, it can only be used in the percentages that Mr. Dyer laid out per each project that's on the CIE. It only goes to the projects that are on the CIE. And if I might just say, Councilman, and I can address this now if you would like me to, but there have been many comments made about the timing and when Northside starts and what the delays have been. I'm prepared, and I've got a board that I can describe to you the challenges that have come up on this project that Northside has overcome, which now they are proud to say that they are in control of the entire 300 acres. And there cannot be any additional property owners throw up roadblocks and say that I'm not going to participate, so you can't get right away through my road. That took, I've been a part of this project, and the first time the city of Canton showed this project at Northside Hospital was in 2002. That's 10 years ago. There have been a series of challenges of which Northside has overcome in order to build what is now a 117-acre campus. And I can tell you that we will start construction on the road before June. And I can tell you there is a schedule in place that takes 27 months after that road is completed in order for Northside to be able to move into their hospital. It's a very long process. Northside Hospital isn't looking for anything, isn't looking for a variance. When DOT funds dried up and the South property owner said, I'm not participating, Northside put up out of their pocket $2.9 million to complete a road to the specifications of the city of Canton, which were detailed out at the time of zoning. That's why it is a system improvement. It was a mandated road to be built. They came out of pocket, or you wouldn't have the road where it is right now. Knowing that their site that they were trying to get to was on the other side of the road, or the other side of the creek, with no funds to do so. You now see, from what the county has been able to accomplish in the letter that was sent to you, that we've now got $4.3 million from the DOT and another $1.4 million from the county. And not only that, but you've been issued a letter from Northside saying that they're putting up an additional $1.4 million to get it there. This is a series. I just want to make sure that you understand the engine that drives Northside has not changed one iota. We've just had some things that are outside of our control. And Northside is just looking for a fair interpretation of that ordinance, which I can show you dates go back to 2010. We have been discussing this in about 13 meetings. So we're just, Northside isn't trying to do anything more than the money that is set aside in the CIE that has been collected for that section of road to get their fair apportionment. And it's not a lot. But I will say one other thing. I met with Mr. Patton. We don't have this number. But I brought my number in on road impact fee with, I thought, a conservative based upon the zoning that is in place today. And my number was around $8 million worth of just roadway impact fee dollars. And I think Mr. Patton said that I think that's probably going to be a conservative estimate. We're talking about our number in conjunction of Northside knowing that they are receiving a fair interpretation of a contractual agreement that they had with the city that extends back several years.
Okay. Let me ask. We got a small amount in there. You say a certain percentage of it should come to Northside.
Yes, sir.
And it's a small amount. Okay, given that. Then you read to us our own ordinance.
Yes, sir.
And what I'm trying to decide is, and I'm not questioning anybody other than the correct interpretation of the ordinance.
Well, your ordinance, the only section I referred to is that there's one service district, there's not multiple.
Okay.
And then it says if there are going to be credits in your ordinance, it says it must be through a development agreement between the person that's putting the money up and the city, which we then saw, it was executed here before Canton Council. So there are actually, the only issue that I had with the statement that was made is there's only one service district. We do have a contract that's in place that was signed by the city that says impact fee credits first, and then there are other avenues. Your dollars that you collect in that entire Canton area are distributed, if you know it or not. It's distributed amongst those projects on the CIE that gets approved every year. That's why the CIE is there, because as the money's collected, people need to know that the system improvements on that CIE are actually going to be constructed.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
You know, I love intent in terms of literally reading the contract. If I go to the agreement and go to the original, it says, with respect to reimbursement from impact fees, Northside Landon will receive reimbursement first in the form of impact fee credits, meaning reimbursement in the form of a credit against the amount of impact fees that Northside Landon would otherwise are obligated to pay with respect to the development of their properties within Canton. Then, to the extent that the amount of construction costs for the work for Northside Landon is responsible in excesses of GDOT funds and non-reimbursable expense exceeds the amount of the Northside Landon impact fee credits, Northside Landon will receive reimbursement for such costs from impact fees otherwise assessed by the city. So by making the amendment, we are reversing the sequence of this paragraph in the agreement that we have with Northside Landon. And that's my point. So, I mean, that's all I have to say.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I have for me, and I left a number of it at home, this issue about getting this hospital built into this city. I want to say that we would do everything possible to get this project up and going. And if we have some funds that we can pass on to Northside to get this project up and going, then I would like to see that. And I don't know what funds we have, but you're saying we had 8 million?
No, that was the total cost that's in your CIE.
Yes, okay, all right. So,
Right now.
They would be asking.
Well, we do have, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Dyer just pulled up, and right now there are some dollars in that fund. We don't know how far back those dollars collected go to the records. That we need to find out, and then apply whatever is the right thing. If he's got the right ordinance.
Well, the agreement, Mr. Cummings had read the current agreement that exists between the city.
If it was due to the ordinance only, that'd be one question, but what we're trying to do is modify the agreement to do it in a different sequence than we currently have agreed to, based on, well, our intent was different than what the agreement states. Is that a correct statement, Mr. Dyer? That we're trying to alter the way we agreed to something based on conversations that have been held that said the intent was really different than what is written.
Okay, we have a motion. You have something else?
Well, I just feel like this is such a big project. We all know that, and there's going to be some give and take in it, and we can stick by the letter of the ordinance and maybe not do so well. And I'd say that if we can do it, based on what I see here, if we can do it, we should give, this project's too big for us.
Believe me, I'm all in favor of the hospital.
I know you are.
You know, you and I have talked about that.
I just don't want the ordinance to
I just don't think we got 30 grand that we can just pull out of our city treasury at this time, and I think that's an approximate amount, maybe only 26.
We got an unfunded fund balance, and I tell you, here's the document, is November the 20th, 2008, and as much as I regret how it was written, it's a fact of life. Northside Landon will receive reimbursement for such costs from impact fees otherwise assessed by the city, which you said. The service area is the city, and we should not have gotten ourselves into it. We're in it. Let's accept it, and let's move on.
Are you reading from the existing agreement or the future?
I don't know how many different.
the existing agreement says impact fee credits?
Yeah, it just.
Well, he was reading a different part of
I'm
it.
just reading different parts of it. Hey, we're in, we did it, and just pony up, and let's get this beautiful project underway.
Okay, well, we still have a motion on the table.
Yes.
And if you're a motion. Okay.
Oh, go back to that. The motion is that the request for the amendment to the development agreement be denied.
So changing the agreement from what it currently exists. Okay. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second it for conversation.
Okay.
We'll do the roll call.
We'll do a roll call on that, as a matter of fact. In fact, I will, well, let's just start, Mr. Cummins.
Yes?
Okay, yes for denial. Okay, Mr. Beresford.
No.
Okay, Mr. Bryan.
No.
Okay, Mr. Goodman.
No.
Mr. Hubbard.
No.
Okay, the motion fails. Okay. So we're back where we started when we started this stuff. So
No, I hope we're gonna have a shovel turning project going.
we haven't had, we would need a motion to approve the amendment.
Then I'll make a motion to.
Pay out another portion of that money. Okay.
Make a motion to approve the amendment to pay out the small pittance that we might have.
I second the motion.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, we will have a roll call vote in exactly the same order. Except I will stop Mr. Beresford since he made a motion. I'm assuming you're gonna.
Yeah, so I gotta say yes.
Okay. Mr. Cummins?
No?
Mr. Bryan?
Yes.
Mr. Goodman?
Yes, and I look forward to it.
Okay. Mr. Hubbard?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Okay. Thank you. All right, next item. Now we've done that one. The approval for the mayor to sign contract with the Georgia Development Partners LLC for Wallace Streetscape Construction and JHC Corporation for the Hickory Flat Streetscape Construction. This is the LCI projects. Ken, do you want to have any comment about that?
This is
Any comment?
basically formality, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
And the reason it's coming back before the mayor and council, you have already approved the award of this bid and approved executing the contract. The fact that this has come in a form of a contract that GDOT specified instead of the city's standard form of contract, city attorney and city engineer felt that it needed to come back for council to authorize to sign this contract that's in GDOT form, not city standard.
Okay, do we have that contract? Do we know?
It's actually, it's in the bid package, so you have to do it, because you've already, if they bid, they can have to read the contract, and it's fine, and there's nothing wrong with it, it's very similar to ours.
2 pages of a contract portion within the whole bid spec package and everything through GDOT.
Mr.
And I
Brown,
believe those are the attachments.
I make a motion that we move ahead with that.
Okay, have a motion and have a second.
Second.
Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Those no, all members vote for the motion. Under new business, discussion and approval of, let's see, we moved that. Yeah, okay, 8A was taken off for the, put back on hopefully for the next meeting. Okay, item B, approval for the mayor to sign ISO consultant contract. Mr. Wood, do you want to comment on that at all? Is there any need? Has everyone had an opportunity to look at it? It was passed out separately from your package, I believe. Does anybody have any questions about it at this point? I believe it's a maximum of 29,000, so forth. 29.5 or something like that. It's the maximum amount.
Oh, yes. 29.
motion to approve.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
Okay. All members voting for the motion with the exception of Mr. Huffman.
While we're on the ISO, I would like to clarify and get this off of the discussion that seems to be floating back and forth through the media. I would propose that the city is going to maintain their fire department. We will not merge with the county because it keeps coming back and forth. And I'd like to say, let's keep the city department. We're going to have an ISO group come in and look at our situation. And I don't know what it takes to stop the dialogue, but I don't recall any dialogue.
I'd like to agree with you. It keeps coming through the paper, but you know, we have a wonderful group of firemen. They do a great job, like our police, and we appreciate it.
Does that require
Well,
a
I
motion?
don't think we need a motion on that. I think that's a matter of individual opinion here, and quite honestly, I think most people agree with that. At least under the circumstances that I know now, I would agree with that. If some better proposal were submitted to us and made it look more advantageous than what I've seen in the past, I might well change my mind. But currently, the answer to that would be no.
If the media is still present, which I think they are, I would love for them to put that in the paper and say that the council has agreed and discussions have stopped.
Or clean it up any way you want to make it.
Okay. All right, next item, let's see. First reading of the ordinance to adopt the 2012 edition of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Canton.
So moved.
I want to know if Mr. Cummings has proofread that ordinance.
I'm gonna put him in the back seat tonight, he's gonna read it all the way down.
Just, if I could give you background on that.
Mr. Huffman said he had a little trouble with night vision. I said, well, he had a choice whether I wanted to ride with him with his night vision problems, or he wanted to ride with me because I fall asleep.
I recommend that you guys get a driver.
We don't need actually a vote on this for the first reading, but then this will come back at our next regular meeting for a second reading. So this will be considered as the first reading to adopt the Code of Ordinances.
And there were no changes in them. There was some cleaning up, but nothing other than changes you've already approved in other ordinances. But it's just a readoption of the code.
Okay, item D, which we added to that, I believe, is the Rad Kids issue that I think Mr. Huffman maybe wanted to make some comments on that.
Well, I do. After listening to the folks here that talked to us earlier, it's a great opportunity for our city. I don't know whether it was said or not, but this is going to be a first, having the lady from Utah come and visit. That's going to go across the country, so it will be a deal where our city's going to get a lot of press and an opportunity for our police department to shine, because Sergeant Bailey is just, she works with so much passion and does such a great job at this, that it is underfunded. I think you've heard that. It's good for our kids, particularly the kids that are higher at risk. And I think that's a question that I had for them earlier that I've been discussing, is having the kids at risk or the kids that can't afford, parents cannot afford to pay the $60. So I would like to get the price of it down to where it's more affordable. And by doing so, I would like to put a motion that the city fund, out of the general fund, $5,000 to go into Sergeant Bailey's budget in order for her to function and make that earmark strictly for this Rad Kids operation that's getting ready to take place.
Now, would this be the, all go to the fee that would be charged normally for someone then that couldn't afford it? It would be paid?
Yes,
there?
it says in the little sheet that was sent around that no child will be turned away due to finance. Exactly how that's going to happen, I'm not clear on. Until we have a way for paying for it.
Or would this be used for equipment and or?
Well, see, they were saying the equipment, they say the consumables was roughly $30, the rest of it was equipment. If we pay for the equipment, which was roughly $4,000 to $5,000, then all they got is consumables, which is back down to $30.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
What they have, and again, Sergeant Bailey has done another outstanding job on soliciting the community, and we've had a number of contributors, business contributors, who have helped pay for certain items. That red suit runs over $1,000. So the numbers that the helmets, the pads for the kids, and that type of stuff is being donated, if you will, by funding. But the consumable supplies are the ones that's going to be issued. The fee that they're looking at currently is $30. It could get down to 25 or 20, depending on how this thing starts. But the idea is for the parents to realize this is important value for, and they'll have a purpose. They got to attend all 5 sessions, the 2-hour sessions. If they don't get it. They can't skip one. They got to be there for the whole thing, because it builds from day 1 to day 5, and then they graduate, and there's recognition with that. So, being what happened to our city was a tragedy, and lo and behold, this Get Smart across America, and they picked us out to kick off this campaign across the United States. City of Canton has one fantastic opportunity to respond to it. I would like that $5,000. Also, they've asked if they could, and maybe this is a legal situation, but we do have this logo with the little top of the column, city logo. Would it be okay to put that on their publication that they would be doing here in Canton/Cherokee? I want to keep as much exposure on Canton as we can. I would ask the council to consider having that logo put on there also. This is a class organization. They've been around for quite a while, and as it was alluded to, started working on this thing back in early October. Lo and behold, we had a tragedy, and we sped up this whole process because we wanted to react as quick as possible. So, Councilman Hutman, if you made a motion, did you?
Yes, I made a motion.
He did make a motion, yeah.
I'll second.
That motion said. Jack, I believe you had a comment?
I was just going to, I think maybe Mr. Beresford may have answered that, if that included the suit and the scholarships or whatever help, that would be a total amount. I didn't know if you were able to answer that, or if Sergeant Bailey.
Maybe Sergeant Bailey could come forward and help us on that.
What Mr. Beresford is talking about, obviously, and Bianca mentioned before, every single class you have to have certain materials, like the shirts, the bands, the booklets, and those are the things that we've got to constantly replenish that aren't cheap, obviously, and I do think you're right, we can get the cost down to $20, $25, you know, the suits and all these other. We had a $3,000 donation from Kevin Williams, Chick-fil-A, and also David Resendez from Cotton States, and, you know, that has really helped us a lot, but to keep the program going in a constant, I can't even explain to you how many emails. I have worked every day, all day long for weeks, along with Bianca, just responding to people, you know, at home, on my phone, text messaging, emails. This is big. And this should be a nonstop ongoing program that I think that would be very beneficial for the city of Canton.
I'm assuming, I mean, I don't know that we're designating exactly how they spend the money, right? I mean, whatever it needs for the program, as long
We're
as
going
it's
to turn it over,
program.
and turn it over but earmarked.
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah.
Will $4,000 or $5,000 pay for the suit you needed, along with the contributions you're getting and the materials? Are you going to still be in the hole, or are you going to keep more money?
Here's my plan for long-term, and we've already discussed this, kind of like a mutual fund. You know, we're grateful if you're willing to give us money, but also to get money, you know, out from the community. You know, I pick up trash on the side of the road for my sports. I'm willing to do whatever I need to do to make a program work, and we're going to make that happen. It would just really be beneficial to us to get a good jump start to make that happen, and then just continue to figure out what we're going to do, because I think we have enough support, and you know, the cost, after we get the stuff, we can maintain it.
Sergeant Beatty, the thing I want to do, and I'm sorry about boring people with it, but I want the kids that are greatest at risk, and they are the kids that can't afford the $60.
Give you an example, we took 5 today for free, no question. They sent us an email, Bianca said, "You give me permission?" I said, "Absolutely." We won't even say anything, they're here. They're in 5 people next week, absolutely free. We took them. We met with Dr. P yesterday, the school board, is exactly what we were discussing, Title I schools. Yes, we need to where these kids are most at risk, absolutely, I agree.
Jack?
Again, can you give me an amount, or can you give us an amount that you are looking for from the council?
$5,000 if you just want me to really, $5,000 would really help. I'll just lay it out, $5 grand, $5K, would be great.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Well, it's an open-ended question.
I think.
Sergeant, maybe you should have said 10.
I'm not gonna push it, I'm grateful for anything, $5.
Mr. Cannon, do you have a comment?
The only comment I have at this time is that Mr. Wood ought to take this into consideration and look at making this possibly an annual budget item, so that when we come
I think
next
that's a
up.
good suggestion, yeah. You know, we have a motion to second there, of course, and I'd like to say, you know, we had a terrible tragedy not long ago. But I think this goes far and beyond that. That's not what this is about. This is about helping the kids in this community now prevent things like that. But this is simply something good for our community, good for the children in this community, and it's something we need to do, period. Any other comment? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion.
Let me answer.
Thank you.
Did we get the logo in?
Yeah, we did.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, city manager's report.
We've got 2 council members and 1 city manager that are trying to get out of town tonight, so I will,
And more than should.
and more than should. You won't have any problem getting agreement on that, I'm sure, but let me just, I'm going to be real brief and not go into a lot of administrative business tonight, except to read you a copy of a letter that I received, and I think the mayor got a copy also, from a gentleman actually written to one of our police officers. And again, I know everybody's equally quick to be complimentary of our police department these days. This is to Officer Trefillo of the police department. Dear Officer Trefillo, this is just a brief note of thanks for your assistance Sunday afternoon, 12 February around 5 p.m. You will recall I was heading to our daughter's home east of I-575 and somehow managed to find myself in downtown Canton. At 91 years of age, I cannot imagine how that happened. You were extremely kind and helpful to call my daughter and then to lead us back to Georgia 20. We arrived a few minutes late for dinner, but all was well. My wife Shirley and I thank you again. Now, part of the reason I read that is just so you would know that we do from time to time get compliments on our police officers. But the particular point I wanted to make was this officer had no idea who this gentleman was that he was helping. But the postscript, the personal postscript on the copy of this letter that I received says, "Well done, Scott. My father-in-law was on the first U.S. aircraft shot down in World War II. We thought we lost 30,000 airplanes, and his was the first. Great legacy, so I'm glad they're close by." He blamed the, quote, new, unquote, exit for confusing him. Well, sort of. And that's signed by Buzz Aarons, who's the chairman, of course, of the county commission, and that's his father-in-law.
His father.
report. City manager would finish up his update. I have one question. We did have a concern on your selection committee for finding a new police officer, and we had asked that we strike the chief of Marietta, and I believe that has been done. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and now we're closing in real fast on another candidate. Correct. Okay, we will know pretty quick. Correct. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't, closing for that application is tomorrow, so the matter of information.
We have no further items, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Wait,
We did? I'm sorry.
One Canton.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Gary, I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
I'm sorry.
The introduced item was the audit of the software system controls. While developing or working with Nathan to develop an RFP for conducting such an audit, it became evident that our current usage of the Encode software has some risk of not catching all processing errors, but that risk appears low, and such errors, should they occur, would most likely have minimal impact on the operations. Therefore, I'd like to withdraw my suggestion with council approval for the expenditure of any funds that we can ill afford at this time for an external audit to be performed. Instead, both Mr. Wood and Mr. Ingren have agreed to allow the Administrative Oversight Committee to perform this review and offer up suggestions for incorporation. This will just save us spending money that we don't have on an outside audit. But the council, since they voted to proceed with an RFP and get bids, I'm asking to withdraw that and asking the council, making a motion to be withdrawn, and that's my motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
One other quick, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
buried underneath another piece of paper. Mr. Wood, I'm sorry Mr. Rush is not here tonight. We got a letter from DJ DeVick that he had sold his interest in the golf course, being that we do have a large interest in the golf course. I would like to find out what those agreements were and where it puts us into any additional liability with the current owner, who was a partner before. So I need to find out before we get too far down the road, and I hate to think, wake up one morning and 3 hours again. We're at Tarzan. So could you get with Mr. Rush or whoever it might need to be to get our answers so that we at least know?
It may need to be Mr. Dyer, actually, because we need to go back and review exactly who that lease agreement was with. I think Mr. Miller signed the lease. I don't recall if Mr. Victor did or not. But
It was an entity. It was assigned to a company, so that's their internal ownership issue, but the lease would remain in effect.
So it has no effect.
It shouldn't.
Him resigning has no effect.
It shouldn't.
That's what I understood. Thank you.
Okay.
Really? We can after someone makes a motion.
Yeah, right. Do we have a motion?
No, I love it.
I've noticed. Have we voted yet on that? Okay. Let's do it again if we did.
Oh, yeah.
Matt? Motion to adjourn.
I voted on his
Oh, motion to withdraw.
Oh, wait.
Oh, motion to withdraw.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you voted on it.
I voted that. It's withdrawn.
No, we had a second, I don't have any vote down
On the motion to withdraw?
I thought you called for a vote.
I probably did.
You did,
We got all.
it was unanimous vote. You did.
Yeah, I did on that. Now we need a motion to adjourn. We're out here.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Good.
before we did start working.
They had registration tonight. They did. Got some registration.